My first road trip to Mexico was in the summer of 1984. Four of us, Dawn, Kevin, Liz, me, and a dog made the drive from Florida in Dawn's royal blue Mercury Comet. We drove straight through, stopping only for gas, bathroom breaks, and to change drivers. Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and finally Texas, Houston, San Antonio, and south toward the border. We survived on pure junk food, mostly chips, Oreos, and a jug of warm orange drink. Summer temperatures and no air conditioning made for a less than comfortable ride, but for four college kids on a road trip, it didn't matter. It was awesome. Kevin insisted we ride with the windows rolled up to improve gas mileage. He also kept a close eye on the speedometer whenever someone else was driving and would yell "speed alert" if they went over the posted speed limit. We cruised to 80s praise tunes on the cassette deck, while our German Shepherd Cocker Spaniel mix puppy Calvin rode on the shelf behind the back seat, only occasionally peeing into the speakers. We made it to the US-Mexico border at Eagle Pass and Piedras Negras. Liz stayed there in Eagle Pass with some friends while the rest of us pushed on south across the border into Mexico. I could not have been more excited about embarking on this adventure. Everything was new and different and fascinating to me. The immigration process, the customs officials, the people coming and going back and forth across the border. Then as we drove through the border town of Piedras Negras, I was captivated by the sights and sounds and smells that were Mexico, unlike anything I had ever experienced in the US. Narrow, crowded, cobblestone streets, crazy traffic, street vendors and taco stands, stray dogs, battered street signs in Spanish, neon lights, everything covered with dust. It looked like a movie set, but this was the real thing. As we left the border town of Piedras Negras, we traveled southeast. It was getting dark, but I did see the classic, iconic image of Mexico, a guy in a sombrero walking with his burro. As darkness fell, we settled in for the final leg of our journey, a 5-hour drive east along the border to Nuevo Laredo and then south to Cadereyta. We couldn't see too much in the dark, but I recall taking it nice and slow because of all the loose cows grazing on the side of the highway and occasionally wandering across. Many years later, a good friend of mine hit a cow on a similar highway, totaled his van, and suffered multiple fractures in his lower extremities. We finally arrived in Cadereyta, which was completely dead in the wee hours of the morning. We navigated the deserted streets as dawn guided us through town and onto the road toward Hacienda El Refugio. We finally made it out to the ranch. Over 1,600 miles and almost 30 hours on the road. We all said goodnight as Dawn went to her house and Kevin and I to another building where we crashed for the night. The morning dawned with roosters crowing nearby. We went outside and immediately fell in love with the place. This was the ranch where my beautiful girlfriend grew up and was homeschooled practically her whole life, before leaving Mexico to go to college in Florida, where we met. The ranch was more like a hacienda, with beautiful brick and stucco buildings, a 4-story bell tower, landscaped gardens, plowed fields, orchards, palm tree-lined roads, and a beautiful scenic view of the Sierra Madre Mountains in the distance. The ranch was the mission compound for Mexico Maranatha Mission and the Maranatha Bible Institute, but for me, it was paradise. Calvin loved Mexico too, and spent the rest of his natural life there on the ranch. The next 2 weeks were one incredible new discovery after another. We met lots of friendly folks who opened their homes to us. We learned and practiced a little Spanish everywhere we went. We enjoyed amazing home-cooked Mexican meals. That's when I realized that my taste buds were made for real Mexican cuisine. Su delicioso. We worshipped and strummed guitars at church meetings, went mountain climbing in the majestic Huasteca Canyon, and Dawn took us on a tour of the bustling urban metropolis of Monterrey. Everywhere we went, we took lots of pictures, back in the days of film cameras. We did all the things first-time tourists do in a new country, and we loved every single minute of it. I knew then and there that this was where God wanted me to invest the rest of my life as His missionary. The days flew by way too fast. I don't even remember how I got back to Florida after that trip, but somehow I did. Then it was back to school and studies, but all I could think about and dream about was Mexico. It was calling to me. I went back to Cadereyta the following summer and stayed for 3 months as a summer intern, living in the back of my hippie van, parked on the ranch under some palm trees. That summer, God confirmed my call to Mexico in so many ways as I learned Spanish, and my love and burden for Mexico and her people grew only stronger. The next summer, I returned to Mexico, where Dawn and I were married, right there on the beautiful ranch that became our home for the next 10 years. God used that first road trip to Mexico to introduce me to missions, the mission field, and to the land that would become my home to this day, 40 years later. Thank you so much for listening to this true story from Memoirs of Mexico. If you enjoyed this story, or if it was a blessing to you, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. That would be a blessing to me. I upload a new true story every day. If you like to read, you can also order Memoirs of Mexico in paperback or ebook on Amazon.com. There's a link in the description. Thanks again for listening.